Hello everyone, this is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're going to be looking at our first Lost Thunder deck profile. Going to kick things off with Zeraora, the poster boy of the set. A lot of people are excited about the power level of this card, but I haven't seen many people talking about deck lists, so I thought it would be a good one to kick off with. I think I've built a pretty nice engine for this deck to try and make it function turn by turn and really take advantage of this amazing card that packs in a great attack, great ability, and also a nice GX attack to load up those energies in the first place. So it's been pretty fun to try and build around this deck, and I'm hoping it'll be pretty competitive. So we'll kick off with the basic concept. Zeraora is truly a great card. I mean, that freedom of retreat just provides so much security in the game right now when pretty much escape boards or switches or Titantalizers are your alternatives. Those are absolutely hideous cards to be playing. You don't want those in your deck. Instead, we're going to use our main attacker to also provide free retreat for the board, which is absolutely insane. And then his attacks do a good amount of damage, or his main attack does a good amount of damage, and that GX attack is also insane. So just because the card is in a vacuum so ridiculously powerful, we're going to try and make him work in any way possible. Going to be pairing him with Tapu Koko GX. He has no weakness, which is really nice because obviously Zeraora has that very awkward fighting weakness. And Tapu Koko himself gets way better now that we have electric power. You can go choice band electric power and go to 190. So Koko becomes a great attacker in the deck as well. And that's really going to be the partner for Zeraora this whole time. We're going to be jumping between Kokos, hoping to Acerola if we tank on certain turns, stuff like that to try and mitigate the fact that we are fighting weak. And we're also going to use the Naganadel, the one that we see with Blacephalon reloading energy. Now we're going to reload energy to ourselves and use Koko to push them all onto himself, which is going to be really cool. Naganadel also offers a good non-GX attacking option. It can hit 160 on his own, and we already play a high choice band count in this list. So he too can hit 190 on the correct turn. So he's a very dangerous non-GX attacker to have in the deck as well. And let alone he is a Psychic type. So although we do have weakness to Buzzwole with some of our deck, we also hit weakness on Buzzwole to make them think twice about using it against us. So that is going to be the sort of balancing act we try and do when playing this Zeraora build. So let's jump into our first few cards here. We are going to see the Pokemon first off. It is going to look quite similar to a Blacephalon sort of Pokemon count. We're going to have 3 of the new Zeraora GX. 190 hit points is insane. I've already mentioned all the elements of this card. Thunderclap Zone, giving everything with a lightning energy attached free retreat. Plasma Fist does 160 for lightning, colorless, and you can't use that attack next turn. You just can't attack at all next turn. Obviously, you do have your own ability, so it's quite easy to move out of there. You have Aero Trail as well. You could just Aero Trail and then retreat back into your Zeraora, because if Koko takes 1 energy to himself, you can then just pivot using the Zeraora ability. And just stuff like Guzmas and stuff like that, that's always going to be fine. So I think this deck gets around that awkward effective attack better than most. And then we do see that full voltage GX attack, which reads identically to the Nitro Tank GX, but it doesn't specify energy. In this list, however, we're only using lightning, so effectively it's get up to 5 lightning energy from your discard pile and put them onto your Pokemon in any way that you like, which is awesome. So that full voltage is going to really help us capitalize on an early game, definitely when we get to go second and hit some speedy cards like Acro Bikes, Ultra Balls, Myserious Treasures. Sighseer is a new supporter in the deck as well. All of these sorts of cards, we're going to try and hit those early, go for a turn 1 Voltage GX if we can, and then hopefully we're swinging with these Sky High Claws, Plasma Fist, and all those other attacks later down the line. Zeraora does provide great early game acceleration, and because we have the sort of mid-game Naganadel charging up literally with its ability, we don't really need to get full value from full voltage. Normally looking to get 2 or 3 energy you're pretty content with, because again we have the Stadium card that can reduce our attack costs later on. If your Zeraora tanks after a full voltage, you can just start Aero Trailing and bouncing. So that's pretty much the idea here. Tapu Koko GX does have that insane Aero Trail. When you play him from your hand onto your bench, you can move him into the active and any number of energy you want with him as well. So that Sky High Claws attack can get going very nice and neatly. Doesn't look too threatening, but I've already mentioned the damage buffs that we are playing in the deck. And Tapu Thunder GX, if you haven't gone for a full voltage, can also deal massive amounts of damage against things like, some Stage 2 decks like Gardevoir GX, where you otherwise will struggle to get 1-hit KOs. You still can, you just need to hit a lot of electric powers all in the same turn. And in certain spots where the opponents just use stuff like Beast Rings and stuff like that, Tapu Thunder GX is going to get 1-hit KOs as well if the opponent is not careful. Going to play 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX, trying to wonder tag into whatever we want, and also offers that energy drive option. We have 3 copies of the new Poipole. This one allows you to look at your prize cards, which can give you some information, and it doesn't state that you have to shuffle your prize cards afterwards, so you can have a notepad with you, use Eye Opener, write down your prize cards in what position they're in, so you'll know for the rest of the game which prize cards to take, which is great. And then you have the Naganadel as well, which has this ability Charge Up. Once during a turn, you may attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Obviously, it can turn into an attacker, as I've mentioned, against Buzzwole and other non-GX variants, which are roaming around right now. Turning Poison does 80 base, and if you have exactly 3 prize cards, this attack does 80 more damage as well. So on the right turn, that can be doing an absolute blitz amount of damage, which is absolutely excellent for you. But in general, we're using him to charge up, so Tapu Koko can steal that energy for himself. And finally, we're going to use 1 copy of Oranguru, instructing our way through the game, giving us a couple extra draws here and there throughout the game is going to be nice. Psychic is an attacking option, but it's going to be super rare that you ever get him powered up, to be honest, because we're moving all the energy to other stuff. So really just in here to get us a few more cards here and there throughout the game, as we are an aggressive and turbo deck that has a lot of cards that can be insta-played. That does move us on quite nicely to the item cards. We are going to play 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher. I have a really high amount of discard. You can see 4 Acro Bike, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Treasure. And I'm only playing 3 copies of Zeraora and Koko. So having Stretcher to hand is going to be really nice, especially for Tapu Koko. Get it straight to hand, pop it back down onto the board, jump back into the active, and you're swinging all over again. So Stretcher is going to be great for you. 2 copies of Treasure helps you pull out Lele's in the early turn for good consistency, and also gets out your Naganadels throughout the game. These Ultra Balls, Treasures, and Acro Bikes, because they are all insta-play cards, it does really tend towards an Oranguru engine as well for additional draw here and there. The Acro Bike going to be incredible alongside these Ball Search cards to discard Lightning Energies to allow our Full Voltage GX to work quite nicely. 4 Electipower is the new item card that really does give a huge buff to Lightning types. If your Lightning Pokemon, your Lightning Pokemon attacks this turn, it does 30 more to your opponent's active Pokemon. That is stackable. That's not a tool either, so you can do it in addition to Choice Band and as many times as you want. So if you really wanted to, you could do 120 if you hit all of your Electropowers in 1 turn, extra that turn. But typically, we're going to be using them here and there to make sure that we reach into knockouts. So these are really insane item cards that we're going to try and drop at the right times to reach knockouts. Following that, 3 copies of Choice Band. Although Electric Power is like a one-use thing and Choice Band can theoretically stay on the board, oftentimes we can bounce our Koko with a Choice Band, which is nice at times, but it's about having it in addition to Electric Power. And finally, the Thunder Mountain Prism Star. Each Lightning Pokemon's attacks cost 1 Lightning less, which is absolutely incredible as well. So Tapu Koko and Zeraora both reduce their attack cost to 2, which is, again, amazing for you when you have this much acceleration throughout the deck. It's going to really make sure that we never really miss a beat, even though our engine is a little kind of kooky, trying to use Aero Trail a bunch alongside those Naganadels. Onto the supporters, we can play 1 copy of Lillie for a good early game amount of cards, because, again, we have those treasures, plus Ultra Balls, plus Acro Bikes. We thin the hand very quickly with this build, and Lillie's going to get us into a large amount. We have those 2 copies of Acerola for some healing against Shrine decks, but also against Spread, and it works amazingly with Tapu Koko when it tanks hits. Then we're going to have 3 copies of Cynthia for some shuffle draw. Sighseer is the new supporter as well that we're incorporating in this deck with 3 copies. You're allowed to draw until you have 5 cards in hand, but before you choose to draw up to 5, you can discard as many from your hand as you like. So we can bin even more if we're not doing any of these interplay cards, and we have even more activators for the Naganadel and for that GX attack early on in the game as well. I'm going to round it off with 4 copies of Guzma. Guzma letting you just pick the targets that you want throughout the game. Is going to be, again, a really nice option for you. And to round things off, we're going to just play 12 Lightning Energy. I think that's plenty to find a lot early, to recharge a bunch, have lots of manual attachments throughout the game. I think we're really going to be missing, and we're going to have a lot of them so that we can freely bin them quite early on and get accelerating via that GX attack, which I keep mentioning because it is so important to get this deck rolling. Onto the full list then. Here is the bigger picture. I think we have a lot of turbo cards. We're going to go very fast. We are quite weak to Garbodor with this current build. I'm expecting Buzzgarb to be a little bit worse, but it would definitely trouble this deck. There is, of course, the option to go a little calmer against a Garb Shrine build because Koko doesn't have weakness and it hits that magic 130, so you can just start bopping through buzzes and Garbs if you do go quite calm. You don't need to go for a big GX attack in that matchup anyway, so although we are littered with items, you have to play that matchup very, very differently. But in every other situation, we're going to try and go fast, draw as many cards as possible, bin a bunch of lightnings, then recover them throughout the game with Naganadels, and early on in the first instance with Zeraora in some circumstances as well. So it's a really straightforward build. I think if there's anything I'd want to change, I think looking to put in something like a Pal Pad could be interesting. I also think there are other potential tech Pokemon that we could be talking about a little bit later on. So let's have a look. Well, not later on, right now actually. The tech options we're looking at is the new Shuckle could be used. Its freshly squeezed ability can let you search your deck for 3 lightnings and put them all into the bin straight away. I think if I was going to make any cut, I'd just drop 1 lightning for 1 Shuckle. It just gets those 3 energy in the discard pile straight away for you, which then allows you to use that GX attack to the fullest. I think if you're going to add the Shuckle, I'd probably just play a 4th Zeraora as well, and maybe change up the item count for a little bit less sort of disruptive draw, because you'll already be putting so many lightnings in the discard pile. You also want to keep drawing into them. E-Switch is a card which I really want to make space for because it does make your consistency of getting Zeraora's GX attack off a lot more common. But you have to remember, we do fall back on the Thunder Mountain, we fall back on Naganadel anyway, so if we don't go for that GX attack, it's not like all is lost. We can still get attacking on turn 2 with the help of evolving into Naganadels and Aero Trailing and stuff like that. So E-Switch increases your consistency of getting Zeraora going for that GX attack, but other than that, I don't think it's vital, other than trying to attack with like random stuff, like an energy drive here and there. I just don't think it's overall that worth it in comparison to just speed. The Marshadow with Let Loose, because we are playing 2 treasures in addition to our Ultra Balls, can give some disruption to the opponents. We've seen it being incorporated with a few aggressive archetypes in the past, like Turbo Rayquaza. This is going to try and have a similar feel to that deck. And Let Loose could be a way of disrupting your opponent's hand size to make sure that your aggression just sort of powers through. And finally, the Stadium of Choice. We're only playing the 1 copy of Thunder Mountain at the moment, but we could definitely be a little bit fragile to some sorts of Shrine variants, so having more Stadium bouncing could be cool. Aether Paradise Conservation is obviously a real headache for spread decks in particular, because not only are you bouncing that Shrine, but their flying flips aren't going to do anything that turn unless they find their own Stadium to remove it. Additionally, Tapu Koko only has 170 hit points. Using that Aether Paradise to push yourself up to effectively 200 without weakness is actually going to be a pain. So if certain decks are playing a low Stadium count, you can definitely punish that. So if you want to make room for a couple Aether Paradise, I could definitely see that happening. Or similarly to the Blacephalon list, you could just play a couple copies of Ultra Space. It's going to help you pull out more Naganadel pieces, and that is, at the end of the day, a big part of the engine, so it's going to be important to play those cards. So 2 copies of Ultra Space, I could definitely see you making spaces for them if you feel like the deck is ticking over nicely already. Let's have a look at the matchups then. I've tried to jot down as many Tier 1 archetypes and new decks that I expect to come out. And here are the rundown of the sort of awkward ones. I think Zora Weavile is going to be a problem because you do play a lot of Naganadels, which naturally have abilities. Orangurus and Lele's, Zeraoras, literally everything in the deck is ability focused, so you're never going to be able to play around their damage output too much, and that's going to be a problem for you. Buzz Shrine, I have said that we have the Naganadel and Koko isn't weak to fighting, but I do think that list will be a little bit too difficult, mainly because they have the early pressure of Buzzwole plus the 4-prize turn, the Sledgehammer, and then they have Garbodor to finish late. And if they play Weavile as well, which they're more likely to now anyway because they have Ditto, that's pretty much everything is going to be a non-GX threat, and that's going to be a big issue. I think for the new decks, Larvitar Koko looks to be pretty awkward. Again, they have spread options, they have a Larvitar, and they have even things like the Fairy Lele. Because we are hungry for energy with all of our attackers, they can be putting a reasonable amount of damage counters on our board, which is a problem. And then the 1-hit KO decks that are non-GX, the Lost March and the Gramble, they should be able to uptrade on you if they get their engine rolling quick enough, and that is going to be awkward. I think something like the Let Loose Marshadow could be incorporated into this deck if you do see a lot of Lost March and Gramble, because basically once they get rolling, it's going to be a real struggle for you. But if you stop them in the early game, you're just going to run them over. So I could definitely see a let loose coming into the deck if you are expecting some of these other non-GX attacking builds coming into the format. So, a couple closing thoughts on this deck. In a vacuum, Zeraora is just incredible. I know it does have fighting weakness, but that's not stopped Zoroark from being at the top of the game, even though Buzzwole is equally as prevalent in the format. And I feel like Zeraora probably won't be as popular as Zoroark, but I do think it can see himself still being a tier 2 deck because against everything not Buzzwole, and obviously Weavile's a problem as well for you, but against a lot of other things, you can try and just outrace people because that full voltage puts a lot of pressure on the board. Plasma Fists and Tapu Koko together alongside Electric Powers can just chain one-hit KOs relatively quickly and consistently, and I think we have an engine here with a lot of item cards that can draw us a bunch, reduce our hand size, use Oranguru to get even more cards, and there'll be a point where, because we have our Naganadels on board, all we really need to start finding are Guzmas to close out the game, because Naga into Tapu Koko is just going to close out those final few prizes in terms of retaining the energy on the board and continuing attacking. So that is pretty much the concept of this build. I think my only other concern is that it could just end up being a worse build of Blacephalon. Blacephalon feels a lot safer. You can be taking a prize on turn 1, or you can be setting up damage counters by burning and confusing the opponent, whilst just having even more explosive output than the Zeraora deck can do. One potential benefit of this build, however, is that if decks are going to be playing Sceptile to try and get around Blacephalon, this can be a potential alternate option with very similar win conditions to that Blacephalon deck. So let me know what you guys think of Zeraora. How have you tried to build it? I feel like this is definitely going to have a huge amount of potential and will eventually see play in the format because it's just too strong not to. Let me know if you think it's the right time or if you need to add in some new text to make some of those more awkward matchups a bit more winnable. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below because at the end of the day, this is the poster boy of the set, and I mean, I'm still in love with this card. I think it's just, whenever I see it, I just see so many elements of a card that you want, and it ticks so many boxes. It's just that awkward ×2 in the bottom that makes you sort of recoil in sadness, but everything else about the card is absolutely insane. So, like I said, let me know what you want to see next down below and what you thought about this deck and everything about it. We will be getting onto PTCGO once that all goes live, but that's not quite yet. So there will be this week a lot more decks in this sort of format with the slideshow, basic concept and matchup analysis and stuff like that. I'll try and keep it fairly concise whilst going over the deck list. So hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you guys for another Lost Thunder deck soon. Cheers.